Hi guys and welcome back to T&G Productions. My name is Tom and in this video we're going to be looking at the fantasy wargaming terrain from Battle Systems, who are a UK manufacturer. Now this is their most recent Kickstarter. It will be making its way to retail in the future and hopefully this will be an informative guide to tell you exactly what you can get with different sets and buildings and exactly what I think of them. Now, if you're not familiar with Battle Systems before, you might know we've done a review on their urban apocalypse terrain. They've done some dungeon sets, they've done some sci-fi to go with their core space game, they've got urban apocalypse, and now they've got this beautiful fantasy range. And essentially this has taken on all of the things they've learned so far and developed it even further. Now, Battle Systems are a UK-based company who make cardstock terrain that is obviously pre-printed, so you don't need to paint anything, you don't need to colour anything, and it's interior and exterior, making it fantastic for wargaming. You can see a wide variety of miniatures from different games on the board here, and also brilliant for D&D. I'm really looking forward to going into school with my students and just putting down like a map like this and go like, let's go to the tavern. And essentially the way this works, it is cardstock terrain that has slots put into it that you put together, and you can use either a variety of items like little clips like this, which essentially just functions like little slots here. Essentially you take one and slot it in, and there you go, interior and exterior. Or one thing that has improved dramatically with this more recent release is there are an awful lot more of card-on-card connections. And the cardstock is pretty robust, if I must say, and there's plenty of ways that you can kind of solidify it even further by gluing and whatnot. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tripod out and zoom in a little bit closer so you can have a good look, and we'll look at how some of the buildings functions and what I think about them. So I will see you in a sec. Okay, so here we are a little bit closer to the action. So when you get your kind of package through from Battle Systems, essentially you get a series of sheets that look like this, which are for different aspects and buildings. And they have a fantastic series of kind of YouTube tutorials for how you can make each of these major buildings. We've got like a tavern in the background there, we've got a blacksmith's forge, we've got an outbuilding, we've got a marketplace and various houses that are dotted around. Now, it's worth saying that they give you a guidance on how to build these buildings, but you are not restricted to it. All the walls are the same size. All of the roofs can be used in different variations and configurations. So actually, this is a modular set and you can connect things however you want to. And once you've built up a bit of confidence with the product, you can make any kind of town setup you want, or you could purchase different varieties that go with it. But this village set gives you a really, really nice balance. Now, each of the major buildings that come with the set are on the table. However, I do have a massive variety of kind of like ruins, barrels, other different parts of scatter that go with it. The only parts of this board that aren't actually from Battle Systems in terms of terrain are the trees and these little barrels here, which are from Deep Cut, and I think the mat, just in case you want to know, is from Urban Mats. But everything else in terms of this cardstock terrain is, so you get scatter such as these carts, it's really cool well, there's lots of little barrels knocking around, and more importantly, there's interior furniture. So I'm just going to take off this roof here and pick this up. So I've got some models on the inside here from Hero Forge, just as an example. But if I just bring this up to the screen here, you can see there are things like bookshelves and bookcases which slot in really nicely, and you can see I've actually glued down on the other side here, let's just bring it around, a table and chairs just to keep it in place, but you can just slot it in and it will hold itself in position. I've just glued it in just for the sake of this tutorial so nothing flies out. And you've got various staircases and balconies that you can put together, which make a really, really nice kind of product. And I'd say that in terms of building buildings, none of these took more than half an hour maximum to put together. And once you do something really simple, like say this marketplace, you get a sense of how to build it. Now, I've built some of this terrain before, and comparing it to where it was when it was using the urban apocalypse materials, you have to say that the actual quality is so much more superior now. They've put real thought into just the connection points and how to keep things together. So for example, there are floors that come with this that you can attach, but this is just a really base building, and you can see it's got some clips just around the outside to keep it on. And actually they've cleverly put the chimney here that slots underneath the building so that actually you've got a little bit of an interior mechanism. Now, a big change for this fantasy terrain is the windows and the doors can be opened and closed. There's half cuts in that allow you to use that kind of as a function. And furthermore, they've got these kind of thatched roofs, which are essentially flat sheets that have half cuts in that you ever so slightly bend, and using these clips, you check to see if your fit is nice and snug, like this. And there you go, you have your kind of thatched cottage, which I think is a really, really elegant solution that you've got for it. And even the bigger pieces like the tavern, essentially, I've got multiple floors that are in here, but they just follow the exact same principles and it allows you to have a really kind of immersive gaming experience, whether you are playing kind of inside or outside. Now, the thickness of the card, just to show you, is pretty good. There's not really too much to worry about here. It will stand up to some robust damage. I can put a lot of pressure down on some of these items like the bridge here or this marketplace, and it's not really going to fall apart. Like I said, if you want an extra bit of sturdiness, you can always put some glue on it. Now, one thing that is worth drawing your attention to is once you've put these items together, you can easily fold it down and pack it away into a tub. And actually, it's one of the things that Battle Systems really publicise, that essentially I can disconnect all of this, put it in a tub and transport it, meaning it is really useful for events and for going to a friend's house. And we've actually used the Urban Apocalypse terrain before for our Conflict Walking Dead event, and it was so easy to take it in. I think what I'm going to do with this fantasy terrain is probably keep the buildings as is, but like I said, the fact that I can take these kind of floors off and attach them afterwards, I can easily kind of go. Now, I've not actually put any of the ground floors basing in, but I probably wouldn't need to on a gaming map, because when we play, this is going to be used for Malifaux later on. We tend to have the buildings as solid objects, but if you're playing D&D, you could glue together some items, but because you want it to be modular per town, you could easily pack it away or just have maybe the tavern in a box. And I would say that you probably aren't going to deconstruct your scatter, you're probably going to keep that all in one piece. But it means that this huge 3x3 map of really dense terrain can be packed down into a really nice kind of smaller area. Now, one other thing that they recommend you do is once you've put it together, let's take this fence post, for example. Like I said, the quality is really good. You know, the print is really nice. It's clean. It's got a very good sturdiness to it. It doesn't bend much at all. But one thing they recommend doing is taking something like this, which is a felt tip pen or a graphic marker, I think these were from Amazon. And they call it penning, but essentially you can take your graphic marker, find a suitable equal color, and just run it along the edges so you kind of lose any aspect that this was once card, as you can see. And here's one I finished earlier. Let's use my best Blue Peter impression. If you compare kind of how this one looks upside down here to this one that's been penned, you can see it just adds that extra little bit of realism to it, which I think is really attractive. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut away again and take you to some of my favourite features, and then we'll round off. So, a couple of my favourite things before we finish off. The first thing I want to draw attention to is the fact that how ubiquitous this terrain can be. So if you haven't noticed already, scaling wise, I would say the 25 to 28 mil models, such as Lord of the Rings and Kings of War here, are the ones that are kind of perfectly scaled for this terrain. But as you can see, even 32 miniature and heroic, such as Age of Sigmar and Malifaux, do not look out of place on this board, meaning that whether you are using this for wargaming or even D&D, pretty much every miniature seems to sit at the right kind of size. You think this troll here, or even Carver, let's use him as an example, they don't look out of place next to the height of these buildings. Even if I put them next here, a troll would be that kind of head height. And speaking of the buildings, I really like the idea that these have got a new overhang. So one thing that they seem to have really worked on for this Kickstarter is to reduce the amount of these plastic clips that are on show. And to be honest, with the tavern, the real standout piece, there's very little plastic on show. And you could actually in the Kickstarter get brown clips, but I think you could easily just paint these if you wanted to. But the fact that they've got this overhang as well is just such a nice little detail. The fact that the chimneys kind of have interior terrain that's connected to them, it just shows an evolution of what was already a very good product. And I'm talking glowingly here. You know, I've spent £70 on this Kickstarter. It's not super cheap, but you think the amount of terrain that I'm getting on this board here, and I've still got loads to spare, I think it's worth every penny. And I think it is a massive step up from the already impressive urban and sci-fi terrain they've got. I mean, they're still doing the same tricks that they used to do, which just makes you get more life out of this. If I take a lake, for example, here, which can also be a swampy lake, you can attach different parts to it. So if I want to take like a river piece, I can snap it in here and I can build a really cool bit. But I've also got some cards to round this out if I just want it to be a lake that sits on the battlefield. Maybe I want my boathouse on it. Maybe I want a bridge on it. But again, conversely, this river piece, rather than just sitting dead on the sprue, I can flip it over and I've got roads. And honestly, this thought that goes into it is really the main selling point for me. It makes it worth the money. I'm pretty certain when these sets come out, they probably will retail for about £70, because that's exactly what the older ones, the core space sci-fi and the urban apocalypse retail for. And just the amount of use that you can get out of this, you can take half this terrain off and you could have a really good small Age of Sigmar board, or you could really build on everything and you can have an incredibly thematic D&D or Malifaux board. And the final example I can give, if you can see at the back, there's basically a realm gate, or let's just call it a Stargate, because that's basically what it is. There's a little control panel that comes with it, which looks like this, which has got a little indentation, and you can see 4 symbols here. They give you these 4 symbols as little cut out pieces. So if you're playing D&D and you're a DM, or if you wanted to make your own unique scenario, you can scatter the 4 pieces around the board, and then you can plug them into this. They'll fit in nicely to maybe activate an escape from the medieval world that you've came into. And I think that's really, really cool. Inside the tavern, I haven't even put them together yet, but there's tons of like coats of arms and shields that you can attach to the wall with blue tack or glue. There's a variety of kind of silly named gravestones. See if we can bring this one into focus. Is it going to work with me? Maybe not. It says Wim the Diabolical rolled a 1 for his cause of death. There's just nice little nods and little tweaks that go with it. So yeah, massive endorsement for me. I think the only work that I need to do now, apart from that penning that I mentioned, is probably spray a little bit of varnish onto these curved roofs just to take the shine off them under the lights. But that's very much a first world YouTuber problem as opposed to you guys playing at home. So yeah, if this is something that interests you and you've got any questions at all or anything you want me to check out or respond on particulars, please do put it into the chat or the comments below. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed this one, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Hi guys, thank you very much for watching our content. It means the world to us. If you'd like to see some more videos, they should be over here. And if you'd like to support our channel, keep these lights on. You can find links to our Patreon and merchandise in the description below. See you later.